So I'm going to open the special council meeting that we're having this evening. Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Mary Lou Pauli. I'm the mayor of the city of Issaquah. And tonight you are attending a first ever event. Your city council, the 6 sitting up here, wanted to find a way to reach out and connect with the community that's different than our typical forums. So I'm going to be your host this evening, but this is your audience. They are here to listen to you and to hear what your concerns are. Tonight we are live streaming on the Highlands Council channel, and we are also recording it, and we'll put it out on our city website so that those who aren't here this evening can also watch and hear the questions that were asked and the answers that were given. So I'm going to turn this over to Deputy Council President Hall and let him get us going. Deputy Council President.
Oh, there it is. I have to turn it on first. Okay. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming out. This is way more people than we thought, which is outstanding. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy lives to join us for this very first community listening session. So I wanted to kind of before I begin, I do want to go around the room and ask council members to introduce themselves first by sharing their names and what council committees or regional organizations that they sit on. So I'm Zach Hall. I'm the Deputy Council President here in Issaquah. I serve on the Council Mobility and Infrastructure Committee, and I also serve on the board for Eastside Fire and Rescue.
Thanks, Deputy Council President. My name is Tola Martz. I'm on my 13th year on the Issaquah City Council. I chair the Services, Safety, and Parks Committee. So issues that come before basically our 3 biggest departments, which is police, parks, and fire, come before my committee. So if you are interested in those issues, we meet on normally the 3rd Tuesday of the month, but it'll be Wednesday this month, but anyhow, and I serve on a couple of regional committees. There is a group that's basically all of King County except for the city of Seattle. It's called the Sound Cities Association, and they make sure that Seattle doesn't run everything in the county. And I've been on the Public Issues Committee with SCA. This is my 12th year, and I'm also on the Growth Management Policy Board of the Puget Sound Regional Council, which is basically a fancy way of saying the multi-county organization that looks at growth and looks at where we have the urban growth boundary line and where growth occurs and where we can build out services, and hoping on a good day that we have the services to support the growth that's occurring. Sorry for that long-winded answer, but it's great to be here. It's particularly great to see some young people in the audience, and hopefully we won't be too boring for the youngsters.
Always tough to follow Tola. Hi, I'm Chris Rabin on council. This is my fifth year. I serve with Tola on Services, Safety, and Parks Committee. I also am serving on the Community Planning and Environment Committee, which is our Internal Land Use Committee. I serve with Deputy Council President Hall on the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board of Directors, and I also represent Issaquah and Sound Cities Association on the King County Growth Management Planning Council, which is a little bit like what Tola was talking about with GMPB, Growth Management Policy Board, which is a multi-county region. The King County Growth Management Planning Council is really figuring out how we manage growth and where growth happens within King County. I think that's it.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Victoria Hunt. I serve on the Issaquah City Council and have served on this council I'm also in my 5th year, like Councilmember Ray. And I am the chair of the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee. That's one of our council committees that looks at zoning and land use. And I also serve on 3 regional committees. I serve on the King Conservation District Advisory Committee. This is an advisory committee that works on conservation issues and how, especially advising how private landowners can improve the conservation value of their properties. And I also serve on the Salmon Recovery Council for our watershed, which is called WIRA 8. That's the technical name of our watershed. So looking at salmon issues and conservation issues around salmon recovery for our very important salmon populations. And lastly, I serve on the Regional Water Quality Committee. This is a committee that makes recommendations regarding wastewater and sewer to the King County Council. So those are my regional appointments currently. And I'll hand it over to Councilmember DiMichele.
Thank you. I'm Barb DiMichele, and I've been on the council. I'm now going into my third year. I served a 2-year partial term and then just was recently reelected to a 4-year term. I serve on the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee for the council and on the Services, Safety, and Parks Committee for the council. And then on the east side, I serve on the East Side Human Services Forum and the East Side Transportation Partnership, and those are both organizations that bring together elected officials from all over the East Side to work on those issues collaboratively. And then for King County, I am an alternate to the Regional Transit Committee, and we had a very exciting meeting today. And also serve as an alternate to the Healthier Here Governing Board, and that is a group doing a lot of really good things in the healthcare arena, and I bet you've never heard about them, but they're really working to transform medical delivery systems in King County. And so those are all, it's an honor to serve on those and represent you on all of those different boards and commissions. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Russell Joe. I'm in my 9th year on the council. So elected in 2021, but I had previously served between 2000 and 2007 on the city council. I chair the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. I'm also the chair of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, which is takes advantage of the hotel tax that we have and tries to encourage tourism and other visits to our city. And then I'm the alternate for the Cascade Water Alliance, responsible for bringing water to the east side. And then finally, I'm the liaison to the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, why not? All we have to do is say our names. So just a couple other things before I get into some opening comments and we get into the substance of the evening. I also just wanted to ask our audience who are here tonight a few questions so that us up here have a good sense of who's here with us this evening. So if you're able and comfortable, please raise your hand if you live up here in the Issaquah Highlands. All right, we got a lot of Issaquah Highlands residents here. Thank you. It's good to have you here. Raise your hand if this is your first time attending a city meeting like this. We got some first timers. We really appreciate you all coming out. Thank you. Raise your hand if you like to attend city events like concerts on the Green or the 4th of July celebration or Salmon Days. Okay, pretty much everyone. Good to know. Raise your hand if you work here in Issaquah or if you work from home. Oh, okay. Got a good amount. Raise your hand if you routinely use public transit or you ride a bike around town. Any bus users or bikers? We got a few. Raise your hand if you've lived in Issaquah for at least 10 years. Anyone been here at least 15 years? At least 20 years? We got some long timers here. Thank you very much for being here. All right, so just a few opening comments then. So we are here today because this council wants to find new, creative, genuine, authentic ways to connect and engage with the community we serve, with you all. The process as it is now and as it has been is this, essentially. We have regular evening council meetings and committee meetings where we consider new policy. And if we're lucky, community members attend in person or virtually or email us in advance any questions or comments they might like us to consider. or any feedback they might have. And we greatly value those who do that. But we all live busy lives, and not everyone has the time or the opportunity or the interest or the ability to read the packets of policy proposals that we regularly consider. So in that spirit, this council wants to try something different. We want to try something new. We want to meet you where you are. No barriers, no packets, no expectations, just an approachable space to ask questions and have conversations about really anything and everything. We encourage you to share openly and honestly. Yours could easily be a perspective that we've never considered before, which would be outstanding. Good public policy, good government is all about that intriguing question, that insightful comment, that compelling viewpoint you hadn't yet considered that changes the way that you think about an issue, which leads to better decision-making and better outcomes for everybody. So I want to ask for your patience and your grace this evening, as this is our first community listening session. We'll do our best to answer your questions, and we may even ask city staff to step in and help provide specifics or fill in the gaps. And if we don't have a question or we don't have an answer to your question this evening, we'll try to circle back with you, or we'll consider it good feedback to keep in mind during our conversations in City Hall. We also want to encourage anyone at any time to feel free to email us directly at citycouncil@issaquahwa.gov. That's issaquahwa.gov. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to run through the plan for this evening and to start our presentations. Thanks again for making it out. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Deputy Council President Hall. Our council president is excused this evening as well, so you do have 7 elected council members. The way our city works, your city works, is that there are 8 elected positions. I'm in the 8th position. I'm in the mayor's position. The mayor in the city of Issaquah, like many of our neighboring cities, is the head of the administration. So I get my policy direction from the city council. They approve the budget to get the work done. And some of the team that executes that is here tonight. What we thought we'd do, and we'd love your feedback on the presentation if you're providing comments afterwards, is we've got 4 subjects here and some very brief presentations. Public safety, emergency preparedness, current projects, public works, current projects in public works, current projects in private development. And so I'd like to invite up our first speaker tonight, which is Interim Police Chief Paula Schwan. Welcome, Paula.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members and citizens, both virtual and in person. This is awesome to see such a large contingency from the neighborhood. This is huge, especially after COVID, and I was here probably 4 years ago with a large group as well, and it was great to meet the community members. My name's Paula Schwan. I'm the interim chief, as Madam Mayor said, and I've been the interim chief for 7 months. I've been with Issaquah for 5, almost 5. And I've been in law enforcement for 27. So I'll get started. And so one of the biggest questions and things that were brought up is, yes, crime is up in Issaquah. Not just in Issaquah and the Highlands, but actually in King County as a whole. And so I have a lot of statistics that have been put forth here. I don't know, it's pretty small. We tried to do a couple different years, 19 through 22 to date, and there is an increase. As you can see, it's gradual. Those are month by month, so if you can't see, the numbers on the bottom are actually the months starting January of 19 and ending in, it says May of 22. So the blue, which is at the top, is specifically for aggravated assaults and then next down is the yellow is burglary, which is property crimes more, which what's been affected. Some of this is all due from the new legislation. Part of it's been due to low staffing. So there's a lot of different pieces that have been contributing factors for the increase. And as far as larceny theft is the one below that, which is the lighter yellow. Robbery is green, which is very minimal. You can see very little of that at all as far as that goes, which there's different terminology. Some people think robbery. That means there's a force or a threat of force versus a theft itself. So shoplift has been a very high piece of conversation, and we've done a lot of different pieces, and I'll get into that in a minute. but part of that is those property crimes and robberies aren't as high as the shoplifts would entail, and I'll get into some specifics about that. And then motor vehicle thefts are also on the rise, and a lot of that is also due to some of the new legislation and what's taken place. What's IPD doing to combat some of these different aspects? We're hiring to get up to full staff. About 7 months ago, we were almost down 40% of our staff. So we are building. And so in building, we've hired over 22 people in the last 7 months, which is a lot of people. And we've gone through all the steps. They're still background checked. They still have a psychological. They have a medical. They do everything else to get through to be any staff in any part of our divisions. But this means currently, it's great we get them hired, but I currently have 12 people in training, which means either at the academy, or that means further on and in the FTO, which is field training, which means they ride along with another officer until they're eligible and able to be on their own. And so this takes a lot of time from the time we hire somebody. We have a lot of very qualified laterals that we've hired, which has been very beneficial. And so that's another piece that's been very large in our staffing. We are fully staffed in corrections right now and in dispatch. And we're working to hire a couple more people. We're going to be hiring, as I put down below, is a crime analyst, which will give you a lot more information as far as statistics that you'd like. We'll be able to give us some of that information and a lot more data for you. And that's more readily available. We also are using city cameras they're non-recorded, but we have dispatch that's using them where they're in good places and they're identifying and be able to watch if something is called in and check those cameras for them to see where someone might be going as also witnesses. So that's another huge piece. We're collaborating with the businesses quite a bit. We started a trespass program with a lot of the businesses where if it's after hours and they have people on their property, that they can sign an agreement with the police department and say if you're on their property, or not you specifically, but someone that's not affiliated with the business after hours, they've given us permission and they don't have to be present for them to be trespassed and us to take enforcement action. And so there's several businesses that are starting to use that and are very excited about that possibility on many properties around the city, as well as in the Highlands. We also started a monthly retail group where all the businesses, we've done it for about 3 months now, they come together with city staff and myself. We teach them, we collaborate and we talk about things that can make their businesses safe, practices that one business might be seeing in one to the next, and talking about even the thefts. We've given them options on things they can do. We've done blitzes at a couple different, and what a blitz is their management comes in and is ready. We can do a bunch of arrests because they can focus specifically on when those actions are taking place or thefts are actually happening. Because we have to be present and they have to want to prosecute. Otherwise, when you call in as a witness, that's some frustration for you as citizens, is you think that if you call and you just saw these people stealing this stuff, unfortunately, we can't do anything unless the victim wants to prosecute. So that wherein lies also some of the frustration, and that's why we built that, and the Madam Mayor has worked largely with the city and these business organizations to work towards that so you have a better community with that piece. There is new legislation that's in effect as well. How can you protect yourselves from a lot of these different ones? Lock your doors and windows of your vehicles and your residence. That's been a really big one. We did some stats, and even in the last couple months, majority of the vehicle prowls that have happened up here in the Highlands and a lot of other locations in the city as well, there are people going into vehicles and taking things, but the cars are unlocked. So they need to be locked, and the things need to be put away so where they're not visible is so helpful. And something that maybe nothing to you, some change, a power cord, to someone else might be a meal if they are able to trade that in. So you might have a bag in the back seat that may have nothing in it, but they don't know that. So those are other things that are reasons and things you can do to help a little bit. Be alert. One of the biggest things is to be the best witness. If something looks suspicious, call 911. If it's in progress, you don't think it's right, give us a description, call 911, tell us why you think it's suspicious, or just dial the non-emergency line, which is listed there. It's 3200, and then option 3. Keep items out of view in your vehicle. We talked about park in your garage. I know that's unheard of these days, but if you're able to and it's not a storage unit, that is amazing. Or if it's not an extra room for you to use, sometimes that's amazing, and sometimes that's what it kind of boils down to. Check the lighting around your residence. Some people, it wasn't in the Highlands, but there was someone that went around and checked windows in a neighborhood. It's not to scare, okay? It's just to let you know and make you aware. They were checking screens in the neighborhoods. If you don't have them, and they went into a house because the window was unlocked. So just locking and doing the basic things will really protect you often from a lot of different things. Add alarm systems to your vehicle and your home, and IPD does vacation house checks if you weren't aware. So if you have to leave for out of town, let your neighbors know, let us know. We don't check every day, but if you let us know that there's supposed to be certain cars, not certain cars, if you're not comfortable with your neighbors, those are some of the biggest things in how you can protect yourself. So thank you for your time.
So grateful for Interim Chief Schwan's work over the last several months, and big exciting news. She will hopefully be confirmed by Council on June 21st as our new police chief. So she has done just a fabulous job. Thank you so much, Paula. I think next up, we're going to emergency management with Lee Shin.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mayor. Thank you again, Council. My name is Lee Shin. I'm the emergency manager for the city of Issaquah. I'm responsible for the all-city hazards planning. And so what we do is we look at all the potential things that could happen to the city of Issaquah. We look at prevention, we look at mitigation, we look at response, we look at recovery. Just yesterday, kind of interesting timing on this meeting, we had a large-scale, full-scale exercise on a 9.0 Cascadia earthquake hitting the city of Issaquah. And so we look at every possible scenario that could happen within the city of Issaquah. I have 23 years experience in the field of emergency management. Fortunately for me, I was able to be on the ground at Hurricane Katrina, a lot of these large-scale catastrophic incidents earlier in my career, really see the devastation. Spent the last 10 years in California, in local government, and I did promise my wife that good weather is coming to Washington. She still hasn't seen it yet, but it's the climate change is another piece. But throughout my career, I've really seen the devastation that some of these events can impact the community. California, as you guys know, the wildfires, earthquakes, and so really it's the sense of urgency for me is always, it can happen tomorrow, and that's really how I approach my job on a daily basis. And so what is our mission? Well, like I mentioned earlier, we prepare for and respond to disasters as an agency, but also we conduct drills and exercise. We really want to practice. A big piece of our exercise yesterday was our community involvement. We have volunteers, community emergency response team that actually were a large part of what we do. We have Issaquah broken into 14 zones, and so we had them actually go out and do rapid impact surveys, actually looking at, in a real-time setting, how are we going to get out into the field? And it really is going to be the community that allows us to respond to something larger and catastrophic. Now keep in mind, Issaquah, we have two things here that we really kind of magnify the floods and weather events. I come from California where we have earthquakes, we have power outages, we have quite a bit of stuff. And so there's a lot that can happen here. It just takes one event, and one event can turn a city upside down. So as I had mentioned earlier, what do we prepare for? Earthquakes, floods, landslides, severe weather. With climate change, we've seen a significant shift in weather. I lived in Seattle about 20 years ago, and I just don't remember the weather being this cold, this late in June. And on the flip side, just getting colder and colder. And so the extremes are really becoming, they're going on both spectrums. And I just remembered my time 20 years ago is a little bit more mild here. And it just seems to be getting a little bit more extreme, more and more. Wildland fire, was able to do every corner of the city, I did a drive by, we created an evacuation map looking at the different routes, we looked at different access roads, and we just did a really comprehensive analysis of how are citizens gonna evacuate in Issaquah. Luckily, there's not many routes in and out, but we still looked at a lot of those private access roads, things of that nature. So what can you do? Now, I'm a Gen Xer, so I keep a lot of preparedness items. My wife gives me a hard time. I have first aid kits. We thought that brownie that my son ate might have peanuts. I had an EpiPen in my car. Everyone's a little bit different. If you look at Gen Z and millennials, a little bit less in terms of preparedness. Let me just get a quick show of hands of how many people could survive up to 48 hours, food, water, just general supplies, if something were to happen in an hour. Oh, okay. So a good cache, emergency food, water, first aid, that's a pretty good show of hands. Typically, Typically the hands are not that common. It's usually probably 20%. We recommend as emergency managers that you have up to 72 hours. You can survive up to 72 hours. If you look at some of these big events, Paradise Fire, Hurricane Katrina, there wasn't food for 72, even longer. And finally, when it became federalized, then food was able to be brought in. There's a lot of different things that can be done. You can assemble your disaster supply kit. It's going to be tailored to your specific needs, medical, power outages. Become trained in first aid CPR, basic skills, Band-Aids, things of that nature. Locate safe places in your home for each type of disaster. How many in this crowd feel comfortable of what they should do if an earthquake happened initially in the first 1 hour? What would you do?
Call my family, make sure they're all okay.
Yeah. And then maybe your neighborhood, you guys have certain skills in your neighborhood, like I've seen like Oakland, for example, they mapped their neighborhood. They knew where the nurses were. They knew where certain specialized people might be in that neighborhood, things of that nature. Best evacuation routes. I'm not sure if you guys have looked at, hey, how are we going to get out of Issaquah if something big happens, right? Show each family member how and where to shut off utilities, basic things like water, gas, electricity. And then, like I had mentioned earlier, store emergency food and water. Up to 72 hours. Now, I've seen, my generation, Gen X, we go nuts. I've seen people with 20 cases of water, freeze-dry food. Literally, their whole garage is an emergency preparedness. They have generators, the whole bit. Everyone's a little bit different on how intense they get when it comes to preparedness. And then stay informed via the city's website. There's social media. We've really tried to bolster the information flow to our community, how you guys get information. If something big were to happen, we're going to utilize a lot of different modes. We're going to utilize social media, that AM 1700 radio, things like that. We want to get every mechanism to get you the information you need if something big happens. So I talked a little bit earlier about that large-scale exercise we had just yesterday. 9.0 earthquake hits Issaquah, lots of injuries, lots of deaths. What are we going to do? We have a community emergency response team. I've been in emergency management 23 years. This is probably one of the best community emergency response team programs I've seen. Came from the Bay Area. I've seen a lot of great teams out there in San Francisco, Oakland. And I'll tell you, this is probably one of the best teams. We have amateur ham radio. We have community, these certs that can do a lot of different things, Medical Reserve Corps. We have people that are paramedics, and really, you can be part of this team. We're always recruiting. We're currently at about 300 active members. In the exercise yesterday, we had about 40 people that participated as volunteers in our exercise. And so it's pretty easy to do. It's a cert training designed to prepare you and help yourself and your family in the event of something large, catastrophic incident, an 8-week course with evening classes. And you can sign up for fall classes. We are back online. We were inactive for about 2 years with this specific program, but now we are finally getting back to more training, more exercise. They had 2 amateur radio, ham radio courses prior to yesterday's exercise, and really it's training and exercise for us from an emergency manager's point of view. You're only as good as how much you train and exercise. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I apologize. I didn't know that he was going to quiz you. So thank you for being ready for his quiz. So as you can see, your administration staff, your city staff is very passionate, but I don't want them to do all the talking. So for our next two speakers, I'm going to ask you to go a little bit faster so that we can allow all the people that came tonight to get some information from council. So Bennett, I think you're up.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council, Issaquah Highlands community. My name is Bennett Ashbaugh. I have been in Public Works for about 13 years. I've been in the city of Issaquah for almost 5 as the Streets Operations Manager. I'm going to touch base on some of the current Public Works projects. All of these are transportation-based, and I'll be available afterwards for questions. So the first project I'm going to touch on is the Highlands Signal Pole Painting Project. This project, as you probably are aware, this project was identified quite a few years ago, and we were able to get a very good contractor on board, and we will be starting this work, I think the end of this month, the end of June. What they'll be doing is they'll be cleaning, preparing, removing the primer coat, and repainting all of the signals. Well, not all the signals. 8 of the signals, 8 of the intersections located on this map. They have various degrees of degradation on and failure on the signal poles, the mast arms that come across, and some of the light poles. This work is currently scheduled to be mainly night work. They're going to need 2 lanes of travel most of the time for their work zone to occur. So it's going to run about 6 to 8 weeks. It shouldn't be very impactful. We're going to keep track of the noise and make sure it's not impacting the residents nearby. And so that work is scheduled for end of June. It'll go through July, and it'll also correspond with another project, which is part of the 2022 Pavement Management Program. So the Pavement Management Program has some robust funding, and we are getting after the current situation on our streets in their condition. So the first project I'm going to speak about is 15th Ave Northeast. This roadway has quite a bit of failure on it, and it is currently scheduled for the month of August. We need to push it back a little bit. We're having some supply issues in getting some of our detection, which we're going to have to replace through this project, our detecting vehicles approaching the intersection. So we'll be removing 2 to 3 inches of the asphalt. We'll be putting it back. There's very minor, if any, concrete repairs. I think we have 2 ramps to do along Park Drive to bring it to ADA standards. It will be a full closure while it's being performed. There's another exit point for that community. It'll be fast. It's going to be a quick project. The other project might be a little more impactful. So we have slated Highlands Drive from Discovery and Highlands down through to our old 2016 paving project close to the washed out right-of-way and where the concrete starts as you're going downhill. We have one minor change in that we will not be going through the intersection of Discovery in this project. We're going to slate that onto another project in the coming years. This section of roadway has the most failure, so we are going to address this year. So we'll be removing the top 3 inches of asphalt, lowering utilities, raising utilities, new striping, and there's very minor concrete repairs on this. Our program this year in pavement management was based around the possibility that we might not have concrete because we were putting this all out to bid during the concrete strike that you may or may not be aware of. So this work is scheduled right now. It says July. It will be night work as well. It is currently scheduled for the second week of July, July 11th, pending any, it's weather dependent, so pending any of that. And the contractor is going to be going fast. They're going to be having a lot of equipment out there. They're shooting to get it done within a week, to have it all removed and paved in a week, and they'll follow up with striping 21 days later as the product needs to wait 21 days before you can put the permanent striping down. And we're going to be putting MMA or paint down, not buttons. So when we do our snow plowing in the future, we will not be removing all of the striping after our snow events and not being able to put it back during the winter months. So we're making that change, and that'll be very helpful, I think, for most of the community. Another project I wanted to highlight is a collaboration between the IHCA and the city of Issaquah. In this project, we have recently, within the last 4 weeks, installed 5 RRFBs, which are great. So obviously many of you know what those are. They're the flashing beacons that you push to cross the street and give more highlighting to the pedestrians as they move through. We just got the signs finally in, and they're all operational at this point. We have a few minor things to add, or to remove, really. We're going to remove some of the parking spots close to these to improve the sight lines and safety for pedestrians crossing the street. But I really want to highlight that IHCA participated in this by purchasing the RFB equipment itself. So the city has installed it. We will maintain it, but it really wouldn't have been possible in this year's budget to get it installed without the help of IHCA. So thank you very much. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Bennett. Last speaker this evening from the administration is Minnie Dollawell, and she is the head of community planning and development, and I kind of do the same thing. Let's do a high overview, and if you have any questions on what you've heard about pavement management projects or private projects, you can catch them afterwards because they're all staying.
Good evening, everyone. So as Madam Mayor said, I'm Minnie Dhaliwal. I've been with the city for about a year now. And I'll be real brief. I will walk you through what's actually happening on the ground in terms of the private development. So most of this development's around West Ridge. So there are about 73 new homes, as you all probably know, under construction. There are about 112 units, which are called Townhomes North Project by Taylor Morrison, and then also Block 4, which is about 38 affordable units. So all of that is under construction. There's also a High Street linear park, which is pretty exciting. I did get to walk it the other day. And it's about a quarter mile of a road. And half of the road got converted into a park. We hope that it'll be completed by this summer. And there are different areas, dog area to trails to lookout, exercise station, and so on. So we hope that'll be a nice amenity for the community members. Just some photos of that place. The other project that you'll probably see construction or breaking ground soon is this Parcel D, which the city owned at one time. We've exchanged it for 49 affordable homes in Westridge, and there'll be about 10 homes built on this property. So that's it in terms of what's happening on the ground in the city. Our department, Community Planning and Development, also plans ahead. So for the next 20 years, we'll be getting into the comprehensive planning update, the issues that your community faces. We'd love to hear that as a listening session. We'll probably have an engagement activity here in the coming years. We're in the middle of updating all our rules and regulations, and one of the things we've learned is the tree canopy coverage in Issaquah Highlands. How do we plan for and make sure this doesn't become a heat island? We talked about climate change. So if you have ideas, thoughts about that, feel free to reach out. But great to see everyone in person.
Thank you, Minnie. That's the last presenter for the administration tonight, but I am going to call up the City Administrator, Wally Bobkowitz, who's been collecting the questions, and he will pose your questions to Counsel, and our Deputy Council President will make sure that you get a chance to hear from all of your different council members. Wally.
Good evening, everyone. Lots of questions, and if anyone still has questions, Andrew Schneider, the Deputy City Administrator, is here. Andrea, maybe you could, we've got additional cards we can pass around, so if anything you've heard so far this evening has prompted additional questions, we'd be happy to take them. So, council members, 3/4 of the questions this evening are all about public safety. There are lots of specifics which we can ask the chief to come back up and address, but I don't know if any of you wish to talk in general. The questions dealt with resources and defunding police. How does that impact Issaquah? Has it impacted Issaquah? What's the council's commitment to making sure that the resources are there in police? So, Deputy Council President, I don't know if you want to facilitate if anyone has any comments or questions or responses to those questions.
So even before recently taking on the chair of Services and Safety in Parks, this has been a real longstanding interest and concern of mine. And so when we were having the biggest challenges last summer, the leadership of the IPD was kind enough to let me come in and talk to the officers and find out where the concerns were in the community. And some of them had to do with things that were what I would say collective bargaining, things that had to do with salaries and the give and take as municipal employees. Some of it had to do with events over the last couple of years. A lot of folks in the community came forward with concerns about public safety. And we did some things like we developed a public safety, equity and public safety plan that really involved mostly having more information about how the IPD worked and providing the intention was to provide more information to help the community understand that we have an incredible police force. And they do a great job, and we're really proud of them. But at the time, it didn't always feel that way for officers. And you combine that with it's a tough time to be in policing, and so a lot of folks in policing have actually chosen to leave being police officers. They're not going to other communities. They're leaving being in police. And so we took that feedback last summer, and we can't really go into the collective bargaining side of it, but we came back, and there were a bunch of different levers that we could pull that we were able to do while still, maintaining the transparency that was so important to folks that have been talking to us over the last couple of years, but letting the IPD know that they were valued. One of the things I will say that the administration did an amazing job. I spent a lot of the last 10 years making sure we didn't get our PSAP taken away, which is our dispatch. And I'm just going to go on for a second here. Many of you know that we had an active shooter incident here 8 years ago in the Valley floor. And one of the reasons why there was a minimum of casualties other than the shooter themselves was because our dispatch did an amazing job. And you can actually, there's a video. I apologize, I could go on for a long time, but we have a gun club, and they have a policy where the dispatch can call over there, and there's actually a YouTube video out from that day, and you can hear them getting the phone call, and like 20 seconds later, there's no more gunfire at the gun club, which allowed the 4 officers that were responding to respond in the right place in the right time. So things like that were really important. And the punchline here is that the administration did an amazing job. We were really at risk of losing the dispatch, and the mayor and the mayor's office said, there's 4 elements to public safety: dispatch, police, jail, and courts. And they all work together to provide the public safety that we have that's so strong here. And they did a really good job of bringing dispatch back. And you heard today that dispatch is now up to full staff, and that's really critical for providing public safety. So that's just one element. But I got to go back and talk to the officers again. I met with all the officers last summer, and then I met with all the officers again this spring, and what a difference it makes. There's really, there have been officers who have left, and there have been officers who have retired out of policing, but we still have our corporals and our sergeants that form the leadership that are out there day to day. When you call in, and somebody responds, they're going to be the leaders on the scene. We have the really strong corporals and sergeants group, and they've stayed strong through all this. So I think we have a core of a really great IPD, and there was an article in, I believe, the Seattle Times talking about how our police force is a lot happier than a lot of police forces that are out there. But we did it in a way, we still addressed the concerns that we heard in the community over the last couple of years, but we strengthened things and we made sure our officers felt appreciated and that people understood that public safety is a cornerstone in this city.
I have a question. How many people are in the dispatch, and what do you consider fully staffed to be?
Well, I'm gonna phone a friend on that one.
So the active shooter that you're talking about, what year did you say that was?
Oh, that was 2014? 2011. Oh, shows how old I am. It was 11 years ago. But
The active shooter that took place in 2020 across from Flintops in the neighborhood right there, where they had walked off the freeway in the neighborhood. In that situation, my concern is that there's such a lack of communication in this city amongst all the people who are capable of acting quickly, that it creates situations that could be so much worse. In that situation, there was no arrest made, and the shooter did get away. But that area right there backs up to the community center where we have children, the swimming pool where we have children and seniors, Clark Elementary School, the high school, the middle school, and then there's another school. There's also Dixon Eck, and then across the street, on the other side, there's actually a private school behind the Presbyterian church. So when the active shooter was, nobody knew where he was, there's no system currently in place to immediately notify all of these vulnerable people that there's an active shooter. Also in 2019, there was a guy who was walking around with a shotgun, which nothing did take place. Everything ended happily in that instance. But again, the only school that was ever notified was Clark Elementary School, because that's where he was walking out front, which negates the fact that, again, there's seniors in the community center during those hours, and there's a great deal of vulnerable people in other schools. And the thing that I see that's a huge problem is we don't have any way to immediately inform everybody of a threat. And again, there was an active shooter in Snoqualmie, that person was never found, and these things happen, but in these days, we can't afford for these things to happen.
And Miss, I think we'll have the chief come speak to that. We've got lots of questions. That's why we've asked folks to put them on cards. So we're going to ask the chief. There's been a couple of questions about school shootings and active shooters, so we'll have the chief come up in a few minutes. Deputy Council President, I think there was other comments from the council.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Michelle, I think you had comments, but thank you, by the way. That's good feedback. So I've written that down to make sure we do some follow-up on that information. Did you want to do that first? Okay, Councilmember Michelle, do you mind making comments first?
And I'll be brief because I really want to hear. But I'm speaking for myself and not for the council. But I think the phrase "defund the police" was a very damaging phrase, and. I don't think that there, at least on my part, there was ever any intent or message that we didn't support our local police. However, the previous police chief did bring to the council the statistic that about 20% of the calls that the police were called out for actually involved no criminal activity at all, that they were social service type calls. And so one thing you need to be aware of is that the administration proposed and the council approved the addition of behavioral health specialists who work directly with the police. And currently we now have 2, I believe. Is that correct? And they are tasked with those kinds of calls that involve, for example, senior citizens who need help with their housing, or other calls that where it really is more appropriate for a behavioral health specialist to be there. I personally see those people as helping the police to do their jobs better. They should be focused on crime prevention, and the behavioral health specialist should be focused on those social services that really need to be delivered to some people in our community. So I hope that there's an understanding there that defund the police was never, ever an intention of, at least on my part, and I think probably for the whole council. So, and I'll turn it back over to you, Chief Schwan.
Were there any other council comments before Chief Schwan comes back up? So, Chief, maybe you could talk a little bit about active shooter situations, what specifically relationships we have with the Issaquah School District. There was also a question about the school resource officer change, so if you could cover those topics, that'd be great.
Thank you. So first of all, the biggest thing I want to say about the defund, that's not something we've ever felt like in the city or in the department that was ever an issue. It's just so I want that to be clear. Us as a department didn't feel that way. But as far as the active shooter situation, there were a couple of questions that were brought up regarding, do we have an active shooter program? One of our firearms cadre is highly knowledgeable, and they do a lot of trainings even within our small cities regarding active shooter. We do it with small businesses, we do it with the schools themselves, and we actually practice and collaborate with the fire department to practice and what would happen in all those circumstances. So that's something we do on a regular basis, an annual basis, and so we continue to press upon that and work with those businesses that want us to work with that. Regarding the question of how we collaborate and let people know when those circumstances take place or when things are happening close to certain businesses or close to certain schools. Each supervisor and officers on scene and admin, when those circumstances take place, we respond, and we take all those things into consideration based on where we last saw the suspect as far as taking where they were at. The people that we have, we do a containment, we are working not harshly, but very closely with Guardian 1. And Guardian 1 is the helicopter with King County. They can be from the end of the county to the top of the county within 13 minutes. And I've rode with them recently, which was really cool, by the way. Adrenaline junkie. But anyway, from the time they literally get the call to the time they're up in the air is within 2 minutes. And so they can literally be to us within 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And so, which seems like a long time in certain circumstances, but what they also have capability now is what they see, you see on TV and they see FLIR, you can see body heat from cameras. They can send that directly to every officer's phone now. So there's a lot of different pieces of that as far as that have been great new tools that we're adding that I'm really bringing forth so we can have a big collaboration. There's more than just us in this practice. And so when it does hit the fan or something bad goes on in our city, we have more reinforcements with mutual aid and different agreements. Regarding as far as letting people know, we had a circumstance a couple weeks back where an individual ran from a store, had a weapon, and we contained him, and Guardian 1 was above, and we had a certain business saying, hey, we were right here. At what point do you know when we get notified? Because we have our own internal system. Well, if every single business and everybody had an internal system, that's amazing, but there's no way even a dispatch center could notify all those different systems. So what I highly recommend and what we try and push out every time we have something like that, whether it's even business hours or after hours, is on Twitter. We put it out there. That's the best blast we can do and say, hey, this is what's going on. We have officer presence. This is where we're going. Guardian was up and even told somebody that was coming out of the business, go back in your business. They have that capability and they're on their PA. And so if there's a school that we feel that that's a circumstance, we'll tell them to lock down. We'll tell them then when they can release. And it's not just about the schools. It is, we do take that into consideration when there's elderly people or there's different certain types of nursing homes or care facilities. I'm sorry.
What would be the determining factor of whether you notify a school or not?
Yes. We need to let the chief answer the questions. If we have other questions, please. Andrew, we've got additional cards if we have.
Okay, as far as the SRO, somebody asked about SRO. They really asked about what was the change in that. That was a decision by the school district. They wanted to go with security guards versus in the city of Issaquah and the Issaquah School District. And so they have security staff. They're dressed very similarly to law enforcement, but they are not officers. I will say that they do collaborate with us. When there was a walkout last week, they did get a hold of us, and I called them and said, I need to know when these are happening. So we have a presence. We are prepared as far as law enforcement goes. That wasn't a decision by us. It wasn't that we didn't say, hey, we're not going to fund this anymore. That we still collaborate. We work if there's any threat of any kind on social media or the messaging that's pushed out to parents. I work very closely with them to make sure that messaging is similar so I can also push that to other members of the community.
Don't go away.
I'll just stand right here.
And maybe I can ask if the council has any comments. Another line of question just is about theft. Why is there so much theft? What are we doing about the theft? It didn't seem to be this way before. Why is it now? I don't know if the council has any comments about that. Otherwise, Chief, if you can just kind of address sort of broad theft from shoplifting at the stores here in the Highlands, the porch pirates, people stealing packages off. What's happened? Why has it changed? And what are we doing about it?
Does someone on the council want to address that first, or would you like me to jump in?
Why don't you just paint the foundation for it? Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
So some of the big things that I think was a contributing factor to the thefts, COVID was a big deal, right? And I think now that a lot of people are starting to go back to work, before it wasn't happening near as much because people, for the last 2 years, because people were home. So a lot of people were home and people didn't know who people were home, and now people are anticipating that they're gone more. So theft has gone up greatly, I think partly because of that. As far as retail theft, that's gone up greatly in our own community. I think a part or contributor, not the only reason, but a contributor was a lot of our transit system was free for a period of time. So it was that they could come here for free. The transit center close to a lot of different things here in the Highlands and downtown. And so I think that was a huge contributing factor. We've been working very closely with Sound Transit and Metro to bridge those goals and those collaborations to where there was a miscommunication to where there's 3 different dispatch centers between King County, who Sound Transit dispatches with, who Metro dispatches with, and who we dispatch with. And so when we keep getting a response or someone calls in something happening on the buses or whatnot, it would go to all these different people, and I've collaborated with them. Call us. If it's in our city, call us. We will respond. We are one of the only communities, or one of very few communities in the area that doesn't respond to calls. So one question had come up whether we respond to calls. We respond to every single call. If there's a call for service, we do. If it's like it happened 3 days ago and you found something stolen, you can report that online if you choose to. But as far as the increase in theft, like I said, it's not a just citywide thing for us in Issaquah. It's actually a huge thing in King County. My husband actually works for another agency as well. He's admin for another agency, and he's experiencing the exact same things. So the best thing to do is be the best witness possible. We have also worked a ton as far as the retail theft with the hierarchy and the administration of those different businesses. Small businesses are very much more wanting to be engaged. The other ones, there's a question of threshold. There's never been a dollar value whether they can press charges or not. That's a myth. It's more about frequency and how many times they've seen a person specifically that they press charges often. They don't want to falsely accuse somebody. And so those are the biggest things. So if you see those things, feel free to call in. Understand, though, law enforcement can only do certain things. So as far as being a great witness, understanding, though, those limitations that the law enforcement has in those responses is very helpful as well. And sometimes if you don't see us and you see a retail theft take place and you call us and we respond, or maybe we can do better. We can do better at calling you because we may have called while we're en route the store that you saw them come out of. And if they don't press charges, we're not going to respond. So we can do better at still responding to you if you're the one that called in, for sure, without a doubt. But we do respond. And the only times we don't take action, we do have our own jail. I mean, we're not just giving a citation. So the increase is some legislation and some just the times with coming out of COVID.
We've got 10 minutes left and lots of other questions. Chief, there's been questions about speeding. Why do people speed? Why aren't cops there to stop them?
All right, we have a traffic unit. We don't have that staffed right at the moment. Our officers, your officers in your community are amazing. I stuck with this community and wanted to be chief here because of how amazing your staff is. They are They work very hard. We've had very limited overtime, and they've got each other's back. So we have had minimal staffing for quite some time, but they are working as much overtime as possible, not because of the money, because they want to make sure this community has as much coverage as possible and be able to respond to those things. Unfortunately, with that, we can't be everywhere. We do have the speed trailer, and we're able to move that around when we can. If people are saying, hey, this is a problem area, we do address it as much as we can, and we still write tickets when it's appropriate. We give warnings when it's appropriate in different circumstances. Just because we pull someone over, it's completely the discretion of the officer. There are certain spaces where there is speeding going on, and we need to know when it happens, but someone needs to call in, so then we know it's a target area, or even if you send an email and say this is happening, then we know it's a problem. You live here, and so if it's happening on a specific street, you know because you see it firsthand, but we don't always know, because when our cop car gets there, guess what? They're not speeding. So when we can be there, and we can try and do some other things when we get fully staffed to more of that, but we can still put speed, the speed trailer up so people know what they're doing and call in so we can get that handled or addressed.
Can I ask a follow-up question, please?
Sure.
So it's more related to parking than speeding.
And that's the next question. So,
okay, well, I intend to ask mine, so go ahead.
Again, we've got 10 minutes left and lots of questions.
I understand. I think I've earned the right to ask a question. I'm living in the neighborhood for 24 years. So,
And we'd be happy to give you a card. But the question regarding people... I'm sorry?
I said I can't write it all in a card.
The buses, RVs that park in the Highlands, people living in there, what can be done?
If people are parking in the Highlands, as far as in RVs or buses or anything of that nature, they're not allowed to be in a certain, and city state code, RCW, Revised Code of Washington, states that, number one, they have to move every so often, and that's required. And so if you call in an abandoned vehicle, then we address, we mark the tires, we do all this stuff to make sure, and we do a follow-up. They have the call pop up and dispatch, so even if the officer that marked it is not working the next 24 hours, someone else goes. And we handle it. Handle meaning we address it and we make contact best possible. Those are the best things possible I can talk about as far as that goes. We've had circumstances down, even in our dispatch and by the senior center parking lot. There was one person that had a motorhome, and we followed, and we every time we got a complaint, we went and addressed it, and we had a conversation with the gentleman. Eventually, it rolled around to where a different law had been broken by his registration, and we were able to remove the vehicle from the location. If someone's living in it, there are laws that we are not allowed to remove a residence. We can't take someone's residence from there if they're living in it. But there's certain other guidelines, so we do what we can within the law to make sure those people are moved best we can. But if we don't know about it, if you don't tell us that that's a problem in your area, then we can address that.
All right, 10 minutes left. Mayor Paula, where are you? A question for you to answer. Bellevue College, they own property up here. Why the heck aren't they doing anything with it?
So for those of you that live here, you know about the big forested area on College Drive. The college has had 2 presidents that I've worked with since I've been in the mayor's office, and their original intention of bringing a college campus out here is really not at the front of their playbook anymore. They have spent some time doing internal reflection and where do they want to go next, and so we don't really have a definitive answer from them as to what they're going to do with the parcel. I know I would like to see some of it put into conservation, if not all of it, but that's going to be a pretty big uphill battle for me to do without giving them something back. So we don't have an update right now. Sorry.
Next questions deal with transit, and Deputy Council President, maybe this is a good question for the council. What are the plans to improve local transit walkability in the Highlands? The questions about the mobility master plan, how does that fit into what we're doing? How does the city's climate action plan, how do all those things deal with transit and walkability?
Well, I wonder if, I know we have a transit someone expert on our council, Councilmember Michelle. I wonder if you want to take a first stab, or if anyone else on council would like to take a first stab with regard to transit?
Or maybe Councilmember Joe, because he's the chair of that committee.
Sure, Councilmember Joe, would you like to?
Thank you. If any of you watched our last meeting yesterday evening, one of the items that came before our committee was a pilot program to have scooters in our town. Now, there are a lot of pluses and minuses to that, a lot of good things and potential externalities that could be a problem for us as well. We haven't made a final decision as to whether or not to allow this pilot program. The company tells us that the scooters can make it up hills up to 20% grade, which would get the scooters all the way up here and all the way back down to the old town if necessary. It'll cover most of the downtown area, most of the central business district as well as the Highlands. It's not a solution for everybody, but it's one piece that could allow people to make that last mile to their home from the transit center, or to use the scooters to go out and do short errands without having to get into a 2,000-pound car and put more carbon into the environment. So it's one piece we're working on, but there are many others, and I'll let others that are experts in those areas as well speak.
Oops, there we go. Just to put things in context, I was just in a regional transit committee meeting this afternoon, and as you are probably well aware, Metro took a real blow during COVID. They lost about 80% of their ridership. They lost almost that much in revenue. That is coming back. The projections are looking good. We just heard today that they had another leap in ridership. They're about 80% back to full ridership, pre-pandemic ridership at this point. So we are dealing with a situation where we've got an agency that's making a recovery, but it's still not fully there in terms of their revenues. I will just say that the administration, the council, the staff is working as hard as we can to get Metro's attention and talk to them about what our transit needs are in this community. We know, I just had a really good conversation before we started, that this hill going up, we need what we call last mile transit services. We need the smaller buses to help people get up and down. We need lots of different alternatives, and we are working on it very vigorously. And personally, also working with our next door neighbors, Sammamish and Redmond, we're having informal discussions about how we can improve transit all across this corridor that runs up and down the east side, because it isn't just one community. If you have a transit system, it has to go somewhere. So we have to be talking about the bigger network and how we fit into that. But we definitely need more transit, and we are definitely working on it. Yeah, right, Andrea, yes. Thank you, and thanks for the question.
There was also the Climate Action Plan and the Master Mobility Plan in that question, and I wanted to mention as well that on the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee, we also have a large code update project right now looking at how we can actually implement the Climate Action Plan, those goals for improving walkability and having reducing emissions by having people have options for using multimodal ways to get around town, and looking at how we can have those goals in our land use code. So that's another aspect of this. And I know that similarly, the Transportation Improvement Program is being looked at through this lens of climate action, as well as the Mobility Master Plan, which has a number of goals, including safety and, again, achieving our climate action goals.
All right, 4 minutes left. Two additional questions. One was regarding firefighters. Eastside Fire and Rescue is a separate entity. The city is a part of that, but there was a question regarding the firefighters that were terminated because they were not vaccinated. So the question was, what's being done to replace those firefighters? And we have a couple of folks that serve on the Ihca board. Councilmember Ray's reaching for the mic.
So you may or may not know, but the guidance that firefighters at Eastside Fire and Rescue got from the State Department of Health, County Department of Health, and the Governor's Office was around emergency medical technicians should be vaccinated for COVID-19. Using that guidance, Eastside Fire and Rescue's chief established a policy that as a condition of employment with Eastside Fire and Rescue, you would need to be vaccinated for COVID-19. They put a number of programs in place to give people time to get vaccinated and to deal with what they were going to do if they chose not to be vaccinated. Eastside Fire and Rescue worked very closely with the union that represents all of our firefighters to come up with a memorandum of understanding and get everyone to agree that this is the policy we're going to put in place. I've been on the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board for 5 years right now. It is the most fun assignment I have. I love it. And this is over the last about 3 months as we've been dealing with the termination of some firefighters who opted not to be vaccinated. It has been the most heart-wrenching and difficult thing to deal with. But it is the policy of the organization, it is the direction we agreed to go, and there's been nothing that would, at this point, change our direction to say, no, we're gonna back away from that. That being said, we are down some firefighters at Eastside right now because of that. We have filled many of those vacancies. They're actively recruiting. We suspect by the end of the year we'll be close to fully back to our operating levels of number of firefighters. But in the meantime, it's been very hard, and it's been.
That you're only missing 2 people, or would you say down 2?
Oh no. But it. No, we are.
How many people are you missing? Are you missing 2 or are you
Oh no, I think there's about we lost about 17 firefighters in the course of this.
And still that's the number currently?
I don't know the number currently. We've been replacing them. That was our low water mark. We're coming back. So I'm not sure what the exact number is right now. We have been able to cover the shifts, cover the staffing. We've not seen any change in response time from fire over the last X number of months since this happened. So like I said, it's very difficult. It's been extremely challenging to deal with it. But I think that our leadership at Eastside Fire and Rescue has put together a plan to get us back to the right staffing level and to help the organization, quite honestly, heal, because it's been very, very hard on the people who work there. So happy to take this offline too with you and go into some more details.
All right, and then last question, and then Mayor Paula, we're at time, I think. The on-ramp to I-90. Why is it so bad, and when the heck is it going to be fixed? Bennett is here. I'll give the answer for the time. The on-ramp belongs to the Washington Department of Transportation. So we have been on their case. Your state representatives have been on their case. The damage to the ramp is so significant that their forces don't really have the ability to repair it. So it has to be completely redone. And so they put that out to bid along with several other projects. We're told by WashDOT as of this week that bid opening is, I think, next week. And this is the top on the list in the entire Seattle area of WashDOT. So it's happening. I just wanted to let you know. We didn't get able to get to all the questions. We're here for another half an hour. Mayor Paula, I'll let you wrap it up.
Thanks. Okay, just a couple of comments. I see you, Jeff. I have a charge both for you tonight and the staff and the council that is here. When the council talked about what kind of format they wanted to use tonight, we knew we would never be able to get to all the questions. We knew we would never be able to get to all the follow-up questions. But what we want to do is to make sure that if you're talking with Bennett or you're talking with a council member, that we capture those answers as well, and we will share them, because we know you have more to go. The original goal that council wanted to do was to test drive and see if you would all come out, and you did. They wanted to address as many different topics as they could, knowing that there are priority issues, crime, parking, pavement condition. So thank you for being patient with us. So my charge to those that are attending is this: please critique us. Please tell us, did we spend too much time in presentation? Did we cover too many topics? Did we go off base? Did we not answer your question? And then my charge to the council and the staff that is still here is, as you are having your one-on-one or small group conversations, if somebody asks a question, let it rate a red flag if you think that answer would have been valued by everybody, because we need to find a way to share that answer as well. So we're going to move into the last portion right now, which is totally informal. The staff will be up here, the council will be up here, come and ask your questions, and we will try and capture any information that was missed. But I really want to thank the council for this creative idea and venue tonight. And your feedback, they'll evaluate it and set the next format. They're good at trying and piloting things. So thank you very much for coming this evening.